Good evening, everybody. Good evening. We're going to get started. We just have a couple of brief opening remarks before we get to dinner and then have our program later on. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Mike Skelton. I'm the CEO of the Greater Manchester Chamber. I want to welcome you to our annual legislative dinner. We're thrilled to be back here at this event here at LaBelle Winery, holding this event again, one of our favorite programs each year. Really appreciate all of you taking time to join us. And we finally brought the good weather for an event like this after the long, wet spring. So we've got a full program ahead of us. I want to just get to a few introductions. I want to welcome our Chamber board members that are here in the audience this evening, and in particular for our legislators that are joining us. Our Chamber Board of Directors is the governing body of the Chamber and is also the policy-setting body for the organization. So anytime the Chamber reviews legislation or a policy issue, it's our Board of Directors that really guides the organization in doing that. We have a great board that is very engaged. So joining us from our board tonight, we have our board chair, Preston Hunter from Ekman Construction, Bill Brewster from Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Donna Gamache from Eversource, Dylan Cruz from TF Moran, Matt Cookson from Cookson Strategies, Mike DeSalle from UNH Manchester, Nathan Saller from Bellwether Community Credit Union, Dick Samuels from McLean Middleton, and Susan Heward from Manchester Community College. Please join us in welcoming our board tonight. And events like this and other programming that the Chamber is involved in wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsors, and we're very fortunate to have many engaged and supportive Chamber member sponsors that help us do our work in the community. So I'd like to recognize our sponsors and then ask one of them to say a few words in a few minutes. Our presenting sponsor this evening is Eversource. Our corporate sponsor is Dartmouth Hitchcock. Our advocate sponsors are Fidelity Investments, BAE, UNH Manchester, Consolidated Communications, and Manchester Boston Regional Airport. Let's have a round of applause for our sponsors. I'd very much like to thank all the representatives and senators and elected officials that are joining us here this evening. I know in particular this time of year is a very, very busy time of year for you all, and spending long days at the State House. So to take some time to be here tonight is really meaningful to us. We really appreciate it. And while certainly I know we may not agree on every issue, events like this we really hope are part of laying a foundation for working together in collaboration. And that I hope you can look at the Chamber as a resource to help you do your job better when you do need assistance on business issues. And I would urge every policymaker that if you have questions or ideas related to business issues, to look at the Chamber as a partner that you can approach to ask our opinion or ask our advice on how to make something potentially work. And we're here to advocate on behalf of our members and would like to play a role in developing policies that are good for our business community. To that end, we're very fortunate to have a dedicated group of volunteers on our Government Affairs Committee, which does a tremendous amount of work during the year monitoring and advocating on policy issues, and specifically this time of year on legislation pending at the State House. And I'd like to point out two people in particular that anytime you have questions or ideas, suggestions related to this, that either myself or these two folks are great resources. So I introduced him once already, but Dylan Cruz, who's the chair of our Government Affairs Committee. Dylan, if you give a wave to everybody from TF Moran. He's the chair of our Government Affairs Committee. And Gina Powers from Rath Young Pignatelli, who I'm sure is known and familiar to many of you at the State House, is the Chamber's government affairs consultant, and really is our eyes and ears at the State House. She does a tremendous job keeping us aware of all the things happening at the at the State House and with the legislature. And so between Dylan, myself, and Gina, if there's an issue that you feel we should be engaged in, or a topic that you'd like the chamber to consider acting on, please feel free to engage us. We'd like to have that conversation. We do our best to stay on top of all of the issues that are happening, but as you well know, they happen pretty quickly this time of year, and we appreciate that engagement. So I'd now like to pivot back to thanking our sponsors. As I mentioned, Eversource is our presenting sponsor this evening. I'd like to invite Bill Quinlan, President of Eversource New Hampshire, up to the stage to say a few words. Bill?
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be the presenting sponsor of tonight's event. Mike and the Chamber are such an important voice on policy matters on behalf of business. So I do want to have a round of applause for the Greater Manchester Chamber committee members. And I know you're all caught up in the ongoing legislative session, but from a business perspective, I look at the range of issues that you're dealing with, and many of them are going to chart the course for businesses in the future of New Hampshire. On my way here, I was thinking about a few of them, whether it's the budget, workforce development, business taxes. These are all top of mind issues for companies like ours, and I know businesses across the state. So the decisions that you all make and the policies that you all generate are really going to set the course for the future. So it's terribly important work. And I'll just talk a minute about our business, which is the energy business. And Mike mentioned Donna Gamache. She keeps me apprised of kind of energy bills. And you all know this better than I do, but there's literally dozens of bills that are focused on energy this session, many of which are focused on, I'll say, clean energy, which is a great aspiration. I think we could all probably agree that clean energy is something we should all be striving for. I would ask you to do one thing, which is to think about a balanced approach to achieving it. And by balanced, I'm saying, yes, there's a clean energy future for New Hampshire and New England, but it's got to be a future that is affordable to customers and doesn't jeopardize the reliability of the grid. How many have experienced an outage before, an extended power outage, okay? So you know what happens when grid reliability is challenged, right? Society and the economy kind of grind to a halt. We got to be mindful of the grid and the importance of reliability. You also have to be mindful of the costs that we're asking our customers to pay. That's another factor in this entire energy equation. I personally believe there's a balanced solution out there. We can have an affordable future, the grid can remain reliable, and we could achieve everyone's clean energy goals. It is going to require the collaboration that Mike talked about, but I do think it's achievable if we're thoughtful. So I would just leave you with that one comment, which is be mindful as you think about these bills that are coming in front of you. Take a balanced approach. And with that, enjoy the rest of your session and have an enjoyable evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, and thanks again to Eversource for their partnership and support. So with that, please enjoy dinner. We'll be back shortly to start our program, and we are going to try and get you out of here as close to 7:30 as possible. So we'll be back in a little bit. Thanks, everybody. Kick off our program in just a minute. First, I want to say a thank you to LaBelle Winery for doing a great job, as always. Give it a round of applause to the team here at LaBelle. So thanks, everybody, and welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your dinner. We're going to have a brief conversation here as part of our event and touch on some of the key issues and things that are pending up at the State House. And we're very fortunate to have a really excellent panel of legislative leadership. Joining us is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Morse. Welcome, Senator. And pinch hitting at the last minute, always able to help us and support us out, is Senator Lou D'Alessandro. Thank you, Senator, for being here. Senate President Donna Soucy sends her regrets. She actually was flying in just for this event today to make it back in time and got caught in a delay, and it had nothing to do with Manchester Airport. It was some other airport. But so she sends her regrets, and thank you, Senator Lou, for stepping in. House Speaker Steve Shurtleff, thanks for being here, Mr. Speaker. And House Minority Leader Dick Kinch, thank you for being here, Dick. So I'm going to touch on a whole host of questions and issues that cross lots of different areas, but I'd like to start at just a very high level that we're now potentially 3/4 of the way through legislative session, and I've talked to a few. I know you're kind of planning out how many days you have left and trying to get to the finish line, but I want to go back to the start of the legislative session, and we had lots of changes coming off of an election year. And so coming into this election year, I'm wondering if you could just share what your particular goals and priorities were. What did you see as the issue or two that you were most focused on working on? And we can talk about how some of those have fared. So, Senator D'Alessandro, maybe I could start with you.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to serve with my colleagues. My colleague in the Senate, Senator Morse, a good friend and a good colleague, and a good president, I might say, when he was president of the Senate, and a good chairman of the Finance Committee. In looking at the legislative agenda, it seemed to me that two things were omnipresent. One is education, which we have to work out, and I think the other is getting more revenue back to the cities and towns, and abating property taxes as best we could. And those are real challenges, and I think that we can do both of those things. But education's always been a big issue. Remember, I was in the Senate when we created education reform. It's been a bumpy road, but we've got to address it. The communities are adamant that they want some help, and I think that was when we started to think of our town, Manchester, and think of education in Manchester, where we have a high school with a 60% graduation rate. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's appalling, isn't it? 40% of the kids don't graduate from high school, so we got to correct that. So I think those were the two big babies, and we will address them and solve the problems. I mean, that's what we're there for. That's what we get the big bucks for, Joe. solving problems. Life is a series of problem-solving exercises. And I must, if I could end with this one, my dear friend, Brother Quinlan, and his energy plan. I love it because I think he's got more credentials than General Patton. So welcome, and always great to see you.
Great.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, coming onto the House side, in addition to assuming the speakership and all that entails from an issue standpoint, how did you formulate your agenda? What were the couple of issues that you were most concerned about or focused on?
Well, first let me say this, I see a lot of good friends here from the New Hampshire House on both sides of the aisle, and if I do seem a little bit more nervous speaking in public than I normally do, it's only because my good friend from Londonderry, Al Baldessaro, was here tonight, and I half expect him to jump up and yell roll call at any moment. Sort of like Pavlov's dog now, he's conditioned me. But get back to your question, I think we've had a lot of important issues facing New Hampshire. The opioid crisis is still prevalent, mental health, state's infrastructure, the high cost of energy. But I think Lou really touched on, to me, what is the most important thing, and that is education. And primarily what we as a state need to do for local communities. And if you read this morning's Concord Monitor, you saw that the city of Franklin is talking about laying off 10% of their teachers. And the reason for that is because they have a tax cap, and they're not going to meet the cap unless they let 9 teachers go. And we know that Berlin is closed in elementary school. And we're proud of the fact that in our state constitution, we mentioned that we cherish education. And I think we at the state level have to do more for cities and towns and indirectly do more for local property taxpayers.
Senator Morse, from your perspective, coming into the Senate, you had obviously had a switch, a lot of new faces in the Senate. What were some of the issues that you were thinking about entering the year?
Well, I probably faced the largest change from November to December to January, and I certainly made decisions that my life was going to change in order to live through this system in New Hampshire. And my first goal was to increase the sales of my company, so sorry. Yeah, but beyond that, I certainly spoke with the Senate President many times because I believe in the institution, and I certainly believe that as we solve problems in New Hampshire and we have debates, I'm probably not the first one that's going to jump at writing a check for education or writing a check back to our communities without having debate, because I've been out and I've listened to some of these speakers. Been a pretty one-sided debate on the education side. I mean, if you want to look at Plastown, New Hampshire, and you want to look at Berlin, New Hampshire, the cost of living is dramatically different. And when I used to study that, it was double. So you can't have that same conversation like one size fits all in New Hampshire. That's why I believe in the legislative process. I believe in the budget. I certainly believe that what needs to be preserved in New Hampshire is our tax policy. It's working, and I certainly will fight to make sure that we continue that, and I think it's what's driving this economy right now. And for everyone that's in business in this room or enjoying what they're making from someone's business, I think you want it to stay that way.
Representative Hinch, your take on what were the kind of key issues that you were most focused on?
Sure. And good evening to everyone. Thank you for allowing us to be here this evening. This is a great venue, and we always enjoy coming here. So for me, it was a combination of, first of all, navigating through 1,000 bills that were submitted this year, which is an unusual amount that happens in a budget year. But more importantly, to make sure that we absolutely kept our focus on the New Hampshire advantage, kept our focus on having a steady and predictable economy. We are doing very, very well right now. By all accounts, New Hampshire is one of the best states in the country to live, to attract businesses here, and to bring business in. I go back to steady and predictable economy, and making sure that all of the positive strides that we've made over the past several years continue with that trajectory, and that we don't throw a quote monkey wrench in the middle of it. I agree basically with the the energy challenges. There's like 24 bills this year, which is unheard of. And some of them are very difficult to really grasp, to see what are the unintended consequences. We certainly have the opioid crisis that is the elephant in the room that we have to deal with. Locally, we're dealing with the issues relative to air and water quality, and what do we do there, and how do we hold people accountable for that, but making sure also, conversely, that restrictions that are put in, there isn't an unintended consequence for that as well. So, it's multifaceted, and when you have 1,000 bills, you have to make sure that you're keeping the trains running on all of them.
Great.
Yeah, roll, exactly.
So I think one issue I'd like to dive in on that came up in a few of your comments, and it gets to the heart of an issue the Chamber really cares about, which is economic competitiveness, is this session there's been lots of talk of different tax policy changes, whether it would be freezing or altering the business tax changes that were approved a few years ago in the context of the budget. While none of this has, of course, been finalized yet, there's been talk or different proposals put forward around a capital gains tax or a payroll tax or other potential options. And I'm wondering if each of you could kind of give your perspective on those types of policies and what they do or don't do to the economic competitiveness, or if you see them as being tied to a particular investment that absolutely needs to be made, and that the return is worth that investment, how you balance those two things. So, Senator D'Alessandro, could I ask you to start on that one on tax policy?
We did tax reductions. We have done tax reductions. They've proved successful. And of course, the anomaly was repatriation. We had repatriation, which brought $100 million worth of revenue back into the state of New Hampshire. I think we can stabilize the tax rates. We can do a little tax reform. We have to go to market-based sourcing. We have to go to single sales factor. We have to align ourselves with the federal Internal Revenue Code. I think there are a number of things that we can do on the reform side. And if we stabilize taxes, we have a good opportunity to keep the economy going in a very positive manner and do things that business wants and business needs in order to be competitive. Because 31 other states have accepted this tax reform. And we're going to accept it, and we're going to put it in our budget. But stabilizing the rate, everyone I think is pleased with the rate. Businesses that I've talked to are pleased with the rate where it is, and they've done well by it. What they're really concerned about is people. Where are we going to get people to do the work? And that's a main focus, job creation, job training. I just said we have a high school that only has 60% of the kids graduate. Well, what the heck do those kids do? Right? Where do they work? Are they prepared? Certainly not. So we've got to spend time and effort repairing that situation and creating opportunities. The Army project, which was a big effort in the last legislative session, we expect exciting things to happen in New Hampshire. That's high level, high technology, high energy in terms of the people that are get involved. We want new people coming into our state. We want young, aggressive, talented people to come into our state because we want the state to be a repository for intellectual property. And we have that great opportunity. We have the Mill Yard, and the Mill Yard's filling up. We've got some wonderful businesses in the Mill Yard, and we have wonderful opportunities in the Mill Yard. But those opportunities will go down the drain if we don't have any people. We need people. With a 2.4% unemployment rate, and I guess 18 or 19,000 jobs that you can't fill, it's a problem. So we've got to address that. And the other thing is we've got to keep New Hampshire people in New Hampshire. I'm very fortunate. All of my children remain in New Hampshire. That's not the case for many others. Not the case at all. But my children remain in New Hampshire. My daughter had a great job out in California at Oracle. Did very well. Went to Europe, had a great job in Europe working for Save the Children. Got her master's at the London School of Economics, but came back. So she's back here. My son is back here. My older daughter is back here. And that's what we have to promote. We've got to keep people in New Hampshire, and we've got to allow them to have the skills, be trained for the skills to fill the jobs.
Mr. Speaker, your take on this issue of how you balance this changes in tax policy, there's a whole number of them that have been discussed, with how you justify that for the investments that you would like to make with those dollars.
Can I just yield my time back to Senator Lieu and go home early? You raised a great question, and we in the New Hampshire House are very proud of the work that the House Finance Committee did on the state budget and our budget, and I'm extremely proud of Representative Dick Ames from Jaffrey, who came up with a capital gains tax on that would impact 4,600 of our state citizens. That bill would have generated $30 million the first half of the biennium, $120 million for the second half of the biennium to go towards education. And Manchester alone would have received 19.1 million of that, which they, like my towns of Pennacook, could definitely use. Representative Ames did a masterful job in coming up with that. I know the governor has referred to it as an income tax. It's not. It's closing a loophole, and it's extending the interest and dividends tax, and it would have been a source for revenue for education. And I understand our friends in the Senate don't like it, but I'm anxious to see when they come out with a budget, what they come up with to find the money for schools like we did in the House. And I know that Senator D'Alessandro, who's the chair of the Finance Committee, will be working hard on that.
Senator Morse, I think I heard you say that you feel pretty strongly that this tax policy gets to the heart of the economic competitiveness, and I imagine none of these proposals that you've heard this year you think would help that competitiveness.
Well, first let me make it clear, you've got one of the greatest assets this year, my 23-year-old daughter coming back home and working in New Hampshire. Immigration didn't happen by accident, by the way. It's because of the policy that we put in place in this state. People want to come here. I mean, I think that's important to understand. I think you have to be very careful talking about these changes. Capital gains tax, our state's aging. That's one thing to keep in mind. And people can make choices. They don't have to live in New Hampshire. I mean, a past senator that's down in Florida half the year, he said to me, the decision gets easier when you start to go after my income and my capital gains. He said, I can move. It's easy decision to make. He says, and as soon as you're ready to make that capital gains decision, I'm going to sell all my land. And you have to be careful with that. And when we talk about the business tax, that it's not an increase or is an increase, look, we didn't count the 90 million. So if we count the 90 million, it's an increase in taxation. But when you're going after businesses and you talk about that 90 million, then you go into training and people's unemployment funds are going to go up by $14 million. Then you talk about workman's comp when you're basically taking the cap off a short-term disability. There's another $70 million number hitting businesses. All these numbers make a difference. They all make a difference in how New Hampshire reacts to things. It makes a difference on your expanding. It makes a difference on people looking to come to the state to expand. One of my proudest moments was developing that highway, which was no easy feat, by the way, to get that permit. And now that 18 miles is being developed, and the message is very strong, we want you here. Let's not turn that message around.
Representative Hinch, if you could wrap up this question on kind of your take on these tax policies and the impact on economic competitiveness.
Yeah, I think that, quite honestly, my take on the whole thing is hell no. We are absolutely on the right track in the state of New Hampshire. People look at the state of New Hampshire in the strides that we've made. The New Hampshire advantage means that we don't have a sales and income tax. It also means that we stop putting our hands in other people's pockets and taking money out all the time to fund some of these initiatives. They're all lofty. I understand that. But when we tell the business community, and there's a huge business community in the audience here tonight, that you can't count on something lasting for more than 2 years, because if there's change, then something else changes. The conversation about the business taxes, if we start there, the conversation about freezing it, and that's not a tax increase. It is a tax increase, and it's just lipstick on a pig. If you're counting on it, you're counting on that decrease, and then someone says it's not going to happen, then that's a tax increase. When we first put these business tax reductions forward 3 years ago, all of a sudden the outcry was, oh, you're going to blow the budget and we're all going to go to hell in a handbag. Well, guess what? The economy is doing great right now. You, as business people, need to be able to count on certain things so that you have a steady and predictable business model. So, to wrap it up, I say no new taxes, hell no. Thank you.
Senator D'Alessandro, I think you said you wanted to respond.
Well, Representative Hitch,
Hi.
I thought I had you convinced. What happened? What happened? What's in that water you're drinking? Is that New Hampshire? Is that Manchester water, Bill? Okay. The businesses got a wonderful tax decrease. We went from 8.5 to 7.9. We also took the VAT down. So they got exactly what they wanted. Exactly what they wanted, and it proved to be very successful. I'm not debating that issue at all. But I think we've come to a point where we have a floor. We ought to stay with that. Business is going to do well, and we do the tax reform that business wants. They want market-based sourcing. They want single sales factor. That's going to keep them competitive in the world market. And we have many in this state who are in the world market. That's the important aspect. The important aspect is doing the things for them that will keep them vibrant and keep that economic plus, going forward. That's really what we have to do. And I'm convinced that we can do that, and we will not add another tax burden. We're going to live with the income that we have. We have enough income based on our projections to do the things that we need to do in the budget process. And as I said, my goal as the chairman of the Senate Finance Committee is to do good for education and to send money back to the communities that have not received money in a decade. In a decade. We owe them. We owe the people of New Hampshire a portion of the spoils. To the victor belongs the spoils. Well, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it properly. We're going to do it in the right way, and I hope that we'll have everybody on board. It's a difficult thing, I understand, but indeed, we're not doing anything that in any way will diminish the vibrant activity that's taking place in New Hampshire. And the vibrant activity demands tax reform. If we don't do these things, we are going to create problems for our own industries. And we want them here. We want them here, and we want new industry coming into this state. And that's our mantra as we go forward. And I travel around the country. I am national chairman of the Council of State Government, so I visit many states in the United States. And we are the envy of many of these states because of what's going on here. Now, as pointed out, we've got to deal with the energy crisis. We know that. We've got to do it. We have no other alternatives. We have got to do it. And that's got to be part and parcel of the deal. When you look at things in terms of tax, you look at things in totality. In totality. And that's the only way to create good tax policy. And the best person who ever created good tax policy in this state was Walter Peterson in 1968, when he accepted the Sanders report and created from the stock and trade, or the inventory tax, created the business profits tax. It was a magnificent change. Met with a lot of animosity, but indeed, it changed New Hampshire. And that change has been omnipresent all of these years. It was good tax policy, it was good tax reform, it was good for New Hampshire, just as what we're talking about tonight will be good for New Hampshire.
Thank you, Senator, and good back and forth on that issue. In the time we have left, I want to get to a few other issues as well and have other panelists chime in on this. And Senator D'Alessandro, you mentioned something a few minutes ago about we need people. And yes. One of the policies that the Chamber cares about, is interested and related to that, is around workforce housing and housing availability, housing affordability. And there's a number of efforts under consideration this year to inject some funds into the Affordable Housing Fund. There's also a bill related to Housing Appeals Board, which we think is a good idea to help move projects in a fair and equitable way. So I'm wondering if you could each share your perspective on workforce housing and if it's a priority. And Representative Hinch, if I can start with you and we'll kind of work your way down here. This is an issue that the Chamber and the business community feel strongly about. We hear it from our young professional members quite a bit, that it's a real challenge when we're trying to attract and retain people here. So first, how do you see the issue overall, and what are your thoughts on the one or two key issues that are pending right now related to this?
Sure, thank you. And I think workforce housing is a challenge in front of us. It's also an opportunity as well. You know, as many know, I'm involved in the real estate market. I know what's happening out there right now in the real estate market. Rents are high. Chris Noah was on TV the other day. He's sitting over there, and you know, I couldn't say it any better than the way he said it. You know, rents are very high right now, and so we need to find a way to bring housing in. You talked about the other bill relative to navigating through the issues that are there with local planning boards and all of that. And there's some very good parts to that bill. And actually, I'm a co-sponsor of that bill. And, you know, so I think that there's some opportunity there. For me, it was a balancing act because I am a strong proponent of local control. So I wanted to make sure that we did something moving forward that did not abandon local control, but it was a method to seek a solution when all else failed. So I think we have to, that's a balance with that bill.
Senator Morse, what's your thoughts on workforce housing and these issues that are pending right now?
Well, I honestly believe the way to create what you're trying to create in New Hampshire is to basically create surpluses like we just did. I mean, we obviously over the last couple of years have put money into it, $200 million in surplus this year. That's not even counting the education side. So that doesn't happen by accident in New Hampshire. And quite honestly, Senator, Victor sort of spoils, I must be in the wrong thing because I know you and I don't agree. I mean, we'd never deal with life that way. I mean, the reality of what's going on in New Hampshire is a debate about what the tax model should be going in the future. We know we need to work with housing. I don't even agree with Dick on passing his bill because I certainly believe in local control and that debate. I mean, you can turn on the TV anytime and hear those debates back home in Salem. You know, they made a huge step to bring in apartments in Salem and go 5 stories, and you know, they're doing it all to create housing. And I think it's an important piece, but these debates don't happen in a silo, in my opinion, and they certainly have to get worked on in pieces. And if you make major movements to make those changes, you're not going to get the workforce housing you believe in because it won't happen that way. You know, Governor Lynch just came in on Friday, brought a class in again, and he's actually doing as a project with 2 of the students. There's a project, they're looking how to attract people to New Hampshire and how to solve problems here in New Hampshire. And when I was asked the question, I didn't realize that these students were doing it as their master's program or MBA. And so my solution to solving this problem was get it out of Concord, because you people will solve this problem basically trying to figure out how it's going to work for the workforce in New Hampshire and getting it out of Concord. If we get involved and we start telling communities what to do and we are the sole funding source, I guarantee you what's going to happen. Prices on all these projects are going to go to the moon, and you're not going to get anything done any better because we put money into it. It's not going to be the answer. And we certainly are trying to build the same housing for mental illness, getting people out of the Sununu Center. We have a lot of housing shortages in New Hampshire. We can't think of them in one little box.
Mr. Speaker, your thoughts on workforce housing and some of these issues that have been up for debate this year?
Yeah. I got out of the Army in 1969, and my first civilian job was a police officer in the city of Concord. And my starting salary was $4,800 a year. And when I got off of probation a year later, I was making $5,200 a year. And now with that big pay raise, I went to the Merrimack County Savings Bank and I said, I want to buy a house. And I found a place for $15,000. And the bank said, you're making a great income, but sorry, kid, you can't afford a house. But there is a program that was called FHA 235. and they helped subsidize my mortgage and got me into my first house. And I look at that's the impact of workforce housing today, so that our teachers, our firefighters, our police officers can live in the communities in which they're teaching. I think we've got to do a better job in explaining what workforce housing is. I know a lot of people in my house district equate workforce housing to low-cost housing. They don't quite understand the difference, and we've got to sell it a little better. But it really is something that needs to be done and something we need to continue to support.
Senator D'Alessandro, final word on
Sure,
workforce housing.
great. We've put money aside for housing, and I think when Chuck was president of the Senate, we put money aside for housing. And I think we did it judiciously, and we did the right thing. We'll have money in the budget for housing this year because we need it. The Housing Finance Authority is a player in the game. For every dollar we give them, they can match it with 6 or 7 and do something that will help us. As the speaker pointed out, listen, I came to Manchester in 1960. I was making $5,000 a year at Bishop Bradley High School, and I bought a house for $17,500 on the west side of Manchester. And Joe, I've been there ever since. So I got 50 years on the west side. I've lived in the house I live now for 48 years. And you know, the bank turned me down for my second mortgage. Turned me down. And I was making $5,500 at that time. So think of that. So it was very difficult at that time to get something. Very fortunately, when Bill Clinton was President of the United States, I was appointed to the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. Federal Home Loan Bank, as its charter throughout the country, and there are a number of Federal Home Loan Banks, a portion of their interest or of their accrued earnings goes back to communities for affordable housing. And we bid for that affordable housing, and Manchester and New Hampshire has won on a number of occasions. It's things like that that we can bring to New Hampshire and create an affordable housing market. Now, as I drove down North River Road and I saw the new development that was taking place, Bob Backus, I noticed that they were building homes that started at $650,000. So the land is being taken up, and the builder says, in order for me to make money, I've got to charge this price. That's not workforce housing. So indeed, we've got to do something. We are allocating some dollars for this project. I think it'll pay off, but affordable housing is what we need. And we got to draw people downtown, like Mrs. Powers did when she lived downtown before she got rich and moved to Bedford. Okay? But indeed, we've got to make housing available. And the legislature, in its wisdom, has done that. In 1817, Chuck, I think we gave more money for housing, right? Didn't we do another 2.5 million? So we did an initial appropriation of about 5. We did a secondary appropriation of 2.5, and we're going to do 5 this year. Hopefully, if we get a budget, my colleagues will support the budget. So we know what we have to do. We've just got to have the determination to do it and to get it done. I mean, as we say in this life, you got to get it done. We're only here for a finite period of time, so let's make it worthwhile and let's get it done. We have the will. We have the money. We've got to do it.
I want to move to a different issue. Probably one of the more high-profile issues that's been discussed this year was the family medical leave proposal, and passed both houses, vetoed by the governor. Senator Morse, I saw you on Close-Up this past weekend talking about this proposal with Senator Feltes, so I wonder if I could start with you, and you could share, just from your perspective, why you opposed the democratically backed version of family medical leave, your thoughts on the kind of alternate path that has been suggested for achieving this type of policy in New Hampshire.
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not sure today, I mean, we can spin anything we want, but there's an income tax involved in what Senator Feltes proposed, and there's no way to go around it. I mean, my first letter was to the people that were doing the study on it in unemployment, and they came back and said it's 0.5% against income. So it was pretty easy to see that. And actually, we'll have another debate on taxing income tomorrow in Senate Finance. I'm not sure why we're going in that direction, because that's the one thing New Hampshire holds dear to its heart. We don't have an income tax, and we should stay away from that. As for where it goes from there, it's not voluntary. Businesses make decisions with their employees, and I think that's an important piece. I have a lot of employees with young children that are going to college shortly. They don't have their parents going into nursing homes. They're healthy as can be, and they're not having babies right now. The decision right now to them is, how do I fund this? How do I make sure that I can send my children to the school they want to go to? And yet we're going to make that decision for them by going under the Family Leave Act. And one of the things I keep trying to tell Senator Feltus, 12 weeks is not going to do it. Because I know from my mother, my father, Susan's mother, Susan's decision to stay home with Emma for 6 years. That's why my daughter was so successful. My wife made that decision, and we ate a lot of pizza because of it. But the reality of making those decisions, don't tell me I was rich. I didn't have a father, and my wife didn't have a father. We grew up without him. So we made what we made in our lives because, there was a reality. We worked hard. And we got to where we are, and then we got there, and Susan's deciding she's not going to work anymore because she's going to stay home with them. Those are good family decisions. I believe in that, and I believe everyone should be able to work hard and do that, and I believe employers should help in assisting in that. One of the big things that my employees want to know about is, can they leave at 3 o'clock to go to one of the sporting events for their kids? I always wanted to do it. I expect them to do it. I told them do their job and then get out of here and go to these events because I think it's so important. But where Senator Feltus wants to talk about it is, let's tax them to get what we want, and then let's give the authority to the government to raise that tax if it doesn't work, if it's not enough money. Every quarter the department could raise that. And I didn't see anywhere where the study proved out that you could use it more than once in 10 years and it not fall apart. And then the reality was every business is going to use this, down to 15 employees. Well, the federal government, they understood back in 1993, Republicans and Democrats, bipartisan, understood that when they were debating the Family Leave Act, not to touch businesses under 50. And I debate for the bigger businesses too, but that's not the point. The point is now we're going down to a group where 90% of the businesses in New Hampshire are under 50. And we're going to tell them what to do. Try figuring out how they're going to function if government's running their business, because it won't work.
Mr. Speaker, if I could ask you to kind of a twist on this question of, you can certainly speak to the Senator Feltus's proposal and why you think that's the right approach, but why not an alternative method that's been suggested of more of a private insurance option, something like what the governor has proposed, that would add this benefit in some way in the private insurance market and make it an option for employers to do that? Why do you see the Feltus bill as a better option than something like that?
Well, let me just say that former Representative Murray Stewart Kyle worked 20 years on family leave. And last year in the New Hampshire House, in which we Democrats were the minority, with a bipartisan vote, we passed family leave. And I thought that was a high watermark for what we did in the past session. The bill we submitted in the budget was similar to what Representative Kyle came up with and what we voted on. I see the distinguished Commissioner of Employment Security is with us tonight, and I read his op-ed the other day with interest. And I wish the governor had reached out to us in the House and talked about his plan. I met with the governor the day before he made the trip to Littleton to meet with the Governor Scott, and he didn't bring it up then, and we haven't heard from the governor since. So to make something work between the House and the governor's office, we've got to actually communicate. And I wish I could meet the eloquence of Senator Feltus when he spoke this past Sunday on Close-Up. But to me, it makes common sense to do this for people. We always hear this thing of doom and gloom. We heard it, people heard it in 1936 when Alf Landon ran against FDR and said Social Security was a Ponzi scheme. We heard it over with Medicare. My parents loved the idea of the Johnson administration bringing forth health care, but then we were told it will never work, and it's worked successfully, and I'm a product of that now. And we heard it on Medicaid expansion. This would never work, and it's been a very big success. I look at family leave as being the fourth leg of that chair, and I think it'd be wonderful for our citizens. We have people who work hard and want to be with their loved ones when they find out they're in hospice. They want to have that time off. And we have over 200 businesses in the Granite State that support family leave. And I think we hear a lot about from those that say, no, it won't work, it's an income tax. But we're hearing just as many, if not more, saying, yeah, we need it, it's time.
So in the time we have left, I'd like to touch on kind of the bigger issue that I know a lot of your efforts are going to be focused on. It's the state budget. And wondering if you could speak to kind of similar to what you were just alluding to, that in order to get over the finish line with something like the state budget, you don't only need the House and Senate to be on the same page, but you need the governor involved. And I'm wondering, maybe Senator D'Alessandro, if I can start from you, from your position in the Senate, where do you see this issue right now with the budget? What conditions do you think are going to be necessary for the House and the Senate and the governor finally to be in a place where they can all perhaps not agree on all the details, but enough of the details to pass a budget?
Right, it takes three to tango in this one. The Senate, the House, and of course the governor. Meeting with the governor and trying to go over areas where we have a situation where we can create some synergy, and we'll work on that through the process. Have to work with the House in terms of what they want. But I think the goal is to produce a budget that benefits the people of the state of New Hampshire. That's our ultimate goal. And as I said, we're in good times, and as a result of that, why shouldn't everyone benefit? And that's our goal. And I think the governor recognizes that. I know the House recognizes that. There are differences of opinion, but we have to meet and reconcile those in order to get a budget passed. The worst thing in the world is no budget. That's terrible. That's a disservice to the people of the state of New Hampshire. It's a disservice. We have a responsibility to produce a responsible budget, and we will do that. And I've spoken with the governor about this on a number of occasions. And are there differences? Sure, there are differences. But can they be reconciled? Absolutely. Absolutely, and we'll do that. We're in the process. We did some budget work today. We'll do some budget work tomorrow, and we'll get it done. I have great faith in the process and in the ability of people to make rational decisions that, for the benefit of the people of the state, must be done. Right, Joe? Got to be done. If they're not, where will I go? Fidelity. You give me a job.
Representative Hinch, if I could ask you from the House Republican perspective, and obviously coming from the same position of the same party as the governor, I'm sure you share a lot of the perspective. What is it going to take to get to those conditions? What are you kind of looking for? And do you think, to what Senator D'Alessandro just raised, we can get there so that we can end the session in a timely fashion and have that process completed?
I'm very confident that there will be a budget. What the budget will look like is still to be determined. Putting together a budget is a collaborative effort. Lou and I were sitting side by side having dinner tonight, and we talked about the budget. He invited me to meet with him and discuss some of his thoughts as well. That's how a process works, is when people get together and thrash it through. And as I said to him, at the end of the day, the budget, there'll be something in there that everybody will like, and there'll be something in there that everybody will hate. And we hope that the hates are less than the likes. But we'll get there and navigate through the process. Putting a budget forward, though, is not only for the benefit of the taxpayers, but it's to provide goods and services to the taxpayers as well at an affordable price, and making sure that we don't have a bunch of hidden taxes and fees in the budget that throw it off kilter. So I'm confident that there'll be a budget that will come out, and we'll get through it.
Well, that's a good point to start to wrap up on. We're getting close to 7:30, and we promised everybody we'd wrap up by then. But I think final word. I ask a question similar to this each year, but I think it's important for the audience to hear, particularly those of us who are not in Concord all the time, to get a sense from your perspective how the legislature works together, even though you many times come from different positions, different political parties, and disagree on issues. And could each of you just share quickly kind of, your perspective on, why you think the New Hampshire system really works, and, what you think we have a very unique system, a citizen-led system. Just in your experience in all the years, what advantage does that give, and why should we kind of hold on to that? So why don't we start down the end? We'll come right down the line. We only have a couple minutes left, so Representative Hinch, if you could touch on that real quickly.
Thank you. And thank you, Mike, and thank you all for being here this evening. It is, if you haven't served in the legislature, it is just an awe-inspiring effort. I come into the House, and you look at the heritage that's there, and yes, we will have our differences. We will have our party differences. Steve and I talk about things all the time. We are friends. We will disagree on many policy issues, but at the end of the day, we walk away from each other as friends, respectful of one another, and so debate will always happen, but as long as it can stay respectful, I think that's very important to the institution.
Senator Morse?
I think I made it clear right up front when I went to the Senate President, when we were changing positions, I made it clear that it's about the institution, and I wanted her to be successful. So I think it works that way. And let me tell you, this governor certainly believes in making sure that the voids get filled. I mean, he came into Ways and Means, he brought in new revenue estimates, which I've never seen in all the times I've been up there. And those were increased revenue estimates. We adopted most of what he brought in, along with a few tax changes. And beyond that, he's made it perfectly clear to me that Senate President and Senator D'Alessandro are coming into his office, and they're working through the budget process, and they're going to get it done. He believes that's good for New Hampshire, and he's going to make it work. And whether I disagree with him or not, he's going to get a budget.
Mr. Speaker?
As I've said before, I'd say about 80% of the bills we pass in the legislature are done with little or no debate. They're either on a consent calendar, or maybe one or two people are going to speak on them, and then they go to a vote. And last week we had 2 days set aside to work on legislation in the House. We got it done in one day because people on both sides worked together and got our job done. I kidded my friend Representative Baldessaro when we started tonight, but in years past I've co-sponsored bills of his dealing with veterans. He's done the same for me, and on those issues we always come together. And a lot of times in the New Hampshire House we find people want to arrive at the same destination. They just want to take a different route to get there. So the comedy in the New Hampshire House, and that's comedy, not comedy, is prevalent, and we do work hard together. We'll disagree, but we're like families. We can disagree, but not be disagreeable. And I think the New Hampshire Legislature, the New Hampshire House especially, is a terrific institution with volunteer citizen legislators, and we do a tremendous job.
Senator D'Alessandro, final word on that.
Thank you. I think the perfect example of cooperation was when the legislature, really under the leadership of Senator Morse, Senator Bradley, Peggy Gilmore, we created Medicaid expansion. 50,000 New Hampshire people are now covered. 50,000. All of the odds were against us to get that done. But we worked together, we got it done, and who benefited? 50,000 New Hampshire residents. And that's still in place because of the mechanics that were put in place by a group of legislators working together. So anything can happen. It usually does in the process, and I think with the budget, we'll keep working until we get it right.
So give me a big round of applause for our panelists tonight. Thank you. Thank you to our panel. Great discussion. Thank you all for being here. I want to thank again our sponsors, Eversource, Dartmouth-Hitchcock, Fidelity Investments, BAE, UNH Manchester, Consolidated Communications, and Manchester Boston Regional Airport. I want to thank Events United, our AV partner, and finally, LaBelle Winery for hosting us again. Thank you all for the great conversation and coming out tonight, and I hope to see you again soon. Have a safe drive home. Thank you.